So what if you never had to die? The scientific community doesn't seem to realize they have been working on this question for several decades. And perhaps the greatest driver of this quest arose from the writings of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and Kenneth Ring, where they related the near-death, out-of-body experiences of the totally blind, who couldn't possibly have physically observed what was going on around their dying physical bodies as they hovered overhead. Except that they did. This was a big problem because the scientific community had been dedicated for centuries to the doctrine of materialism, which holds that all that is real and exists is composed purely of physical matter, and that phenomena such as mental states and consciousness are produced purely through brain activity. Now, if that were true, that would mean complete understanding of the universe would be based on physical phenomena alone, and there would be no need to study or understand consciousness. And since those who experience near-death events are almost never hooked up to an EEG monitor, then maybe the brain could have hallucinated what they claimed they saw. So science continued to cling to the belief that everything we experience is due strictly to physical interactions. However, in 1991, Pam Reynolds underwent complex, life-saving brain surgery, which required that her body and brain be kept in a state of clinical death, as verified by continuous EEG monitoring. In spite of all the measures which shut down all her physical functions throughout the procedure, Pam accurately related extensive visual and conversational events during the surgery that were corroborated by hospital staff. Now, although the validity of her experience couldn't be denied, the scientific community has largely chosen to ignore this inconvenient evidence. Now, estimates of the number of NDEs in the U.S. range from 9 to 20 million people, which is roughly 5% of the general population. And numbers this large guarantee statistical significance and a huge level of interest as well, because the experience is more dramatic and euphoric than anything one could possibly imagine, and no one can convince you it didn't happen. I know this because for 12 years after I had my NDE, I was certain nothing could possibly be greater, and that I must have gotten a glimpse of heaven or something like that. So, regarding the scientific question of whether consciousness is real, millions are convinced by their experience that it is real. And for those whose NDE lasts long enough, it is also quite common to have perception of their physical surroundings disappear completely, being replaced altogether with a non-physical realm. Now, this opens the possibility that if the entire physical universe can completely vanish in a few seconds, the doctrine of materialism might have it backwards. Perhaps the physical realm is less real than everything else, and it should also be mentioned that many experiencing an NDE become aware that while in their non-physical state of existence, they also inhabit a body that closely resembles the physical body they just left behind. And the possibility of resuscitation establishes that consciousness can remain in their new non-physical body or return to re-inhabit their physical body. And as a side note, this is a good time to visit a so-called God Worlds chart, which represents a particular mystical teaching's representation of the various realms where consciousness gathers its experience. Now, this will take on greater meaning as one expands their exploration beyond the physical realm. Now, within the lower realms, or the realms of time and space, consciousness utilizes a variety of bodies to gather experience and express itself. Upon physical death, it abandons the physical body while retaining the non-physical bodies associated with the space-time realms above it. And mystical teachings relate that consciousness makes a great many transitions throughout the realms of time and space in order to gain enough experience and understanding to enter the realms beyond time and space. And of course, it is pointless to attempt to convince anyone that bedrock reality consists of consciousness transitioning back and forth through the various planes of existence, sequentially inhabiting a great many bodies or avatars we use to gather our experiences, as this is contrary to most people's understanding. Your own personal experience is the only meaningful source of proof. Now, the accounts from the millions who have experienced NDEs do provide overwhelming evidence that the scientific community is on thin ice when it comes to the doctrine of materialism, but again, only experience provides proof. Fortunately, separating consciousness from the body in order to explore the universe does not require one to die. Mystical teachings have existed for thousands of years in order to facilitate just that. However, mystical teachings clearly have not succeeded in convincing the general public. But on the other hand, there is no shortage of internet gurus eager to coach you in meditative techniques intended to facilitate communication with deceased family members and the like. And there is nothing wrong with this, although results are generally mixed. However, imagine that you could engage the assistance of someone who has mastered separation of consciousness to the greatest degree possible. And this assistance wouldn't be simply in the form of written instructions, but as personal, real-time guidance on a continuous basis, both within contemplation and throughout one's daily life. Of course, this would only be possible from a guide who has established their consciousness on a continuous basis within the realm beyond time and space, the eternal realm. Now, as mentioned, there have been many such mystical teachings through history that have claimed to provide this. Some of them still function, and some exist through written accounts of their teachings. My 40-plus years of contemplative practice within one of these current teachings has been extraordinarily successful, providing me with what I call an eternal instant of experience within the eternal realm. And this was accomplished within the first 2 years of my study. Although I would never doubt or deny this event, it was deeply reassuring to have two of my friends within the same teaching relate having the same experience. And the 40-some years since this experience have been essential to assimilating some degree of that infinite expansion of consciousness. I do not doubt that other mystical teachings might also provide similar success, and since my experience convinces me that there is only one universe and only one God, all such teachings must necessarily be equivalent. Now, consciousness is the only practical means of faster-than-light travel to explore the universe and find our true purpose within it. And every one of us has this capability. It is up to you when you choose to develop it. Now, if you prefer nearly endless cycles of reincarnation, you'll need all the technology science can develop. However, if you want to have complete freedom throughout the universe, you won't. So here is the key. It is pointless to go on endlessly trying to determine what consciousness is. Instead, you need to determine what it can do, what it can accomplish. And it turns out this is effectively impossible unless you have guidance within contemplation from someone who has mastered this. Those who have near-death experiences claim that nothing could possibly be greater than the experience of dying. And it is so dramatic and euphoric that it is nearly impossible to form any other conclusion. However, having the experience of the eternal realm and the realization of God consciousness is literally infinitely greater. And it is quite possible this can be attained much more quickly than one might think. It turns out the claim of Star Wars is actually true. There is something inside you which can allow you to accomplish truly incredible things.